to the Leadership Heart Podcast with Sandra J. Horton, the Growth Catalyst. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast, the show where bold innovation meets conscious leadership. I'm your host, Sandra J. Horton, and I believe that leadership is not about titles. It's about impact, intention, and the courage to serve others. On this podcast, we will go beyond the strategy and surface level success into real and honest conversations with change makers in health, tech, innovation, social impact, and beyond. You're going to hear from visionary leaders like Alessandro Carli in just a moment, because we are building those connections around the globe. Leaders who understand that in a world powered by technology, it's humanity that must lead the way. If you're ready to lead with more purpose and clarity and heart, you're in the right place. So let me bring up our wonderful guest. Let's bring up, there he is, all the way from our beautiful place in Italy. Alessandro, welcome. Alessandro Carli, thank you so much.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me, Sandra. I think I'm starting to loving it already.
Well, thank you. We bring lots of positive energy, Alessandro. And now that I have you live, and welcome those, we're going to make sure that I keep track of the comments. So whether you're with us live, welcome, welcome. Please leave a message where you're coming in from, or if you're listening to this later on the podcast. I'd like to introduce the amazing Alessandro. One of the most beautiful things about Alessandro is that we share a kindred connection. We got to meet each other through Arafat Glossary. That was through the Mega Global Hub. So Alessandro is an amazing man who has been working in personal development since the 1990s. That's amazing, that commitment to personal development in this whole area. And one of the things that Alessandro has absolutely mastered is the importance of systems dynamics. As a leader, this is something that you really truly need to lean in and to understand. And it's called systems intelligence. And I love that word, intelligence. Learning how you can relate to reality. There's different perspectives. There's different ways of looking at that. And we're going to dive into that in just a moment. He works with small business owners and professionals and executives. And he truly is the one that helps support them as a coach, as a guide to move forward in their leadership. He has written also in 2 books in Italian, The 5 Principles of Corporate Success, which is important, in 2002, Your Purse and Your Life on Self-Esteem in 2008. So welcome, Alessandro. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you again, Sandra. It's a pleasure.
I always like to start off with something a little bit fun, something that maybe our audience won't know about you. So what is one surprising, interesting fact about yourself?
You were mentioning before the fact that I've been starting very, very early. Back in, when I say 1990s, it was like 1990, just that precise year. Well, I had no idea what I was doing because at the time, perhaps in the States, of course, yes, because North America in general, they've been talking about personal development and all these things for a long time. But in Italy, it wasn't that much stuff. At the most, there was memory techniques. That was and mind dynamics, stuff like that. How to use your mind, how to strengthen and empower it, etc. That was about the only thing. But actual personal growth was something that was not known. And that's why we were working in Geneva, in Switzerland, with people coming from all over the world, doing this leadership class. And I was one of them. And that was back in 1987. It was an incredible experience. In 5 days, I just thought, not just me, people just turned over and like 180 degrees. We will never be the same again.
It's so true. And I'm sure this resonates for everyone. We can imagine in that moment of stop, in that aha moment,
yes.
There was an instant reflection, an awakening, a opening of, oh, I see things different. In your aha moment, is there one that really resonates in your leadership that really fundamentally changed? Mine was when I was at Royal Roads University in Victoria, BC, because actually Alessandro comes originally from Montreal and then moved to Italy with his family again. It was in Victoria, and it was just like, it was called An Untold Story. And I unlocked my whole inner essence of a leadership story. Can you think of something that was that fundamental moment that was like, oh, this is it?
Well, of course, I was studying books and reading books at the time because I needed to learn myself. And I remember reading this incredible book by Stephen Covey. He's mostly known for the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And of course, I had read that book too. But what really, like the ha-ha moment, like he called it, was when I read The Principle-Centered Leadership. That book opened everything to me because that's where he started. It was the first one that I read anyway, talking about the machine and nature's paradigm. He separated the way we look at reality. And that was the first book. And then, of course, I read other books and I went further into that, like The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. And I dug more deep so that I can know more. And then I have a personal experience, spiritual experiences. And I sort of put all these things together. And that's how I came up with what I've been doing since for at least 20 years.
Wow. And that is around looking at from inside, from within to transform without. And I just want to kind of dive into that because for me, that was a foundational moment because we can't, again, I'm mindful of the words because words have power. So I'm always and in my NLP training and things, it's interesting that when I made the choice to change, that's when I opened up. It was like I had an open mind, I had an open heart, and I had an open will. Almost like what Otto Scharmer talks about in the Theory U. When you're open, all this new information comes in, we can absorb it. How can a leader take in and be open to these kind of shifts?
Well, he must want it. He may not know what it is that he'll need to do, so he cannot expect it. But if you're, like you said, if your desire is strong, because everything depends on desire, everything we do is about that. So that's the very first thing that I always talk about. It's about how strong is your desire to really change your life and change people's lives. If you do not have that desire, if it's just about, well, I have to do this, I have to lead people, I have to take my business somewhere, I have to take my family somewhere, that's not a desire. That's something that you just have to do. How do we know that we have grown? I always say that, because we talk about personal growth. You know that you have grown when your desires change, when you feel that there are new desires coming up. And usually when there are more altruistic desires, because you want to be there for other people. Until you do not feel that desire, I don't think you really can be a good leader. I start from, okay, I need to build myself, so I have to focus on myself. But you come to a point where you say, okay, now I've grown, I've learned a lot. What am I going to do with all this? And that is a sign that you have grown.
To me, it's almost where we, different transition points in our lives as we're growing. Like if you even look at, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're fulfilling all our basic needs, our self-esteem, as we go up the beautiful pyramids. It's almost where we get to, and you talked about this a little bit earlier about the spirituality, but the self-actualization. There's more to us. There's more to just me. It's a we. It's like, where do I sit in the relationship with my systems? With what kind of impact do I want to have on the world? So how do people, as you're saying, identify those passions? Like, is there any tips or tools or things that you help people kind of go, oh, that is important to me. That is a passion. Because I've found coaching other people that for some, they're so on autopilot. They're just going and doing and being. They haven't taken the time to stop, observe, and kind of identify that. So how are you helping people to do that good work?
It's about, as we said, you used a very important word, which is opening, to be open, because I don't think you can plan that beforehand. You cannot know beforehand what you need to learn to assess the fact that you have grown and that you want to do something for people. Things just happen. When you're open and you're following a path, for sure, 100%, it can be today, tomorrow, in a week or a month, but definitely things will happen that will tell you that you are on the right track. And that's why you need to be open for that, because if you're already in your mind, you already have decided what has to happen, then things are not going to work, because things are going to happen and you don't see them because you're so focused on what you thought that was supposed to happen.
And I want to welcome Cecilia. Welcome. Thank you, friend. Thank you for your comments. We just love having Cecilia. Appreciate your support. And I love how Cecilia said Alessandro is an international leading English speaker. Yes, his style, your tone of voice, and content of his lectures is just amazing in terms of top quality. I love that. And I just appreciate that. And I just want to honor you also saying, in order to conceive others as well, to gain credibility, you have to know yourself very well. Yes. As well as have a high degree of self-esteem. Yes. Thank you, Cecilia. That's really adding to that whole piece. I want to shift a little bit, Alessandro, because I want to get into systems thinking, because I think a lot of times people aren't aware of that. And I remember, as a good example, and maybe, again, just to kind of set the context, I remember in a younger version of myself, and I was like gung-ho, and I'm going to make all this change in the systems. I was leading some transformation work. I didn't realize that my zest and my gung-ho, I was going to hit a wall when I came into systems, and not understanding the impact if you come into a system and you're trying to create the change and you don't understand the system. So can you define for everyone's listening now and on the podcast, what is that and how do you gain that skill to really look at systems thinking?
Okay, so first of all, we need to understand what the system is. There are two types of systems. One is artificial and the other one is natural. Our artificial system is like the PC you're working with. It's okay. It has components, elements, parts, and they're all working together in unison so that you have a result, which is to be able to talk over the internet and all over the world. And those systems are just the same thing. We're made, like, for example, us, we're made of cells, we're made of things that we're made of psychologically, emotionally, etc., and they all work together in unison. Now, we have to be able to work systemically. We need to understand how systems work. We need to understand how to differentiate between artificial systems and natural systems. And you may think, oh, yeah, that's normal, that's easy. Of course, artificial systems are different than natural. Well, not really, not quite, because people treat natural systems, which are people, which are businesses. Businesses are natural systems because they're made of people. But when you interact with these systems as if they were machines, in other words, I want to have control over them, then that's where the problems come. And so that is why it's so important that we understand what human systems are, what reality is, what we're dealing with. And here is when people realize that there are laws. Like, for example, to build a PC, you need to understand electronics. So they're made of that, and they have forces. They have electricity going through them, and you have to build the machine in a way that it runs fine, synergistically. We have to do the same thing because our reality is made of forces. It's made of laws, the same laws of physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, spiritual laws, whatever, and dynamics. And when you understand those, then you can lead. Because until you do not understand what reality is, or even understand what goes on in a person's mind, or in a group, or in a business, then you cannot lead. Where are you leading them if you don't understand what they want, what they need, where they're going, and where they can go, unless you understand systems? Now, this sounds a little complicated, but it really isn't. Really, it's much, much more simple because you don't have to figure out anything. You only have to understand and apply it. And that's one of the things that really made me passionate about this study.
It's inviting even with more curiosity about the application for individuals like, well, this sounds interesting. This sounds really good. So, Alessandro, what can people do in terms of actions to become more observant, like evoking their own observer to look at how they look at things in their own work? Are there any tips or tools that you have for that particular? Because to me, that's the entry point. That's the openness to say, oh, how do I look at things?
This is an interesting question. Like systems, understanding systems does not come natural to people. Why? Because of our egos. Because when we have a business, we want to make money, we want to have success, we want to make it bigger, stronger, productive, whatever. You try to organize all your resources in order to get to where you want to go. Because you want it for yourself, automatically this becomes something that is or non-systemic, which means you're treating things like machines, like something artificial. So in order to go other than that, you must get to a point where you realize that what I'm doing is not working anymore. Until you don't get to that point, you do not get the desire to grow, to know more. And because this is experience I had, and it's the same experience that other people that I worked with had. In other words, nobody comes up with by saying, "Oh, I want to learn systems dynamics."
Yeah, it's so true. It's like, what is this? And it's interesting, Alessandro. I want to kind of go because where I feel like you may be going is around this whole systems awareness piece.
Yeah.
Like there's actual things that people can look at in order to experience it, to learn from it, to then kind of build that vocabulary. Is that kind of where you're going? That's what I'm sensing.
You have to understand that we are entering a domain which is very similar to having had to cross what it was like what we call normal intelligence, like
Yep.
operational intelligence that we've been using since the beginning of time, and we went into emotional intelligence. I mean, that's been a big leap. Okay. I don't know in the States, but I guess it was the same here in Italy. It took a long, long time. It took at least 20 years to get people into the mindset of emotional intelligence. And the same thing is like with systems dynamics. But you see, how did we go from operational intelligence to emotional intelligence? As I said before, because at a certain point, you understand operational intelligence alone will not work anymore. People need to have other types of interactions with their surrounding. And that's where emotional intelligence came in. The same thing happens with systemic intelligence. When you understand that it is not enough to be operationally strong and emotionally strong, but that you're dealing with another reality, which is external. It's something that you weren't even aware of. But a new door is opening up at that point. Because when you understand, okay, I'm using operational intelligence, emotional intelligence, but I'm still stuck. Or rather, I'm stuck again. I'm getting stuck again. And that's where the awakening comes up. And that's where the desire of wanting to do more comes in. Because we are more interconnected. And this is going to be more in the future. The more we connect, the more the world shrinks. And we are not only more connected quantitatively, but even qualitatively. And that's where the game changes. And that's where you need to be able to connect with all these things with different tools.
Yes. And I think the word connection is a powerful word.
Yeah.
Because connection can come as transactional, or it can actually be more transformational, where we actually experience it, where we feel it, we see it, we hear it. And that is that place of opening, the opportunity to shift our state, to look at things, to experience things, whether we choose to be more negative or more positive. And I think in leadership, I want to dive and shift a little bit now into uncertainty, because we do have these connections between between teams and organizations, but there's so much uncertainty and so many things that are swirling around. And I'm using my hands purposely for this because it is a whirlwind right now. And leaders are just feeling this vortex all over them. And it's so my question is to you, with all the experience that you've had in understanding this complexity and going through this change, what can a leader do today to really just go through the change? And as a change practitioner, this is a big one for me because I see people who are resistant to change, to go through this, lead through the change where it's calmer and easy to eradicate this whirlwind, this repeated patterns that are part of the system. How do we stop it, kind of almost pattern interrupt it, break it down, to be calm, to move through it in a way that brings others with us?
This is where pain comes in. We don't like pain. Pain enough.
I don't like pain.
Well, nobody does. Is that unless you go through pain, you will never want to change. People change when they have pain. We have to get there. There's no, it's very rare, unless a person is very much aware, spontaneously, he will change from one state to another without feeling pain because he will be thinking, what for? Why should I change? I'm fine. So unless you go through pain, and there is a lot of pain going on, and this is a good moment for that, and say, I have to do something. The uncertainty comes from the sensation that you are lacking control. You do not have control as you used to have. Like when businesses were run on at a strictly operational stage. And then what happened with emotional intelligence, you understood that in order to improve and to evolve, you need to get out of your box, to your comfort zone, and start to deal with people in a different way. And now we're in a stage again where we need to understand that we are much more connected, that the rules are changing, and this makes us feel that we're not in control and makes us feel uncertain. Uncertainty is painful, right?
Yep.
When you feel uncertain, it means that you do not understand what you're dealing with and that you need to make that step further. This is what leadership is about, is to be able to, it's not just about leading people, it's to understand what the game is, what the new game is in a new world. At that condition, can you actually lead people somewhere? Otherwise, you can't. Where are you leading them? But the fact that you know systems, you know these laws, you know these forces, that gives you certainty because you know that you're dealing with these things. It's not something that you have to figure out. It's there. And for example, in classes that I do, I make them do some exercises to make them understand how to relate to systems in a certain way. And that helps them go, breaking that necessity to keep control. Because one thing is that you feel you do not have control that you had, but at the same time, you fear that as you evolve, as you try to do something more, to understand more, you're still going to get yourself in a state where you cannot control things. And that's a very delicate stage because it does happen, actually. Also, very important that you have somebody on your side that will help you get you through that.
That's very powerful. And it's like a mic drop. I hope everyone got that. Go back and listen. That is a beautiful moment. And I want to welcome Mike. Thanks, Mike. He has 8 of his beautiful leaders with him coming in. Thank you so much, and glad of the knowledge we are gaining. Thank you very much, organizers of this great episode. Oh, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And it's wonderful around the globe to connect people and to offer, like with Alessandro, this great knowledge, this wisdom, the lived experience. And this is the key to Alessandro, is that you have done the work. You've worked with organizations and individuals. The foundational moment of realizing that we are not just an I, and this is unconscious leadership, but we are a we. Breaking down the silos, breaking down the control, releasing and eliminating I know it all. That old hierarchical management style and leadership style.
That's a very important point. It's I would call it an epiphany. That's when you realize that you cannot do it on your own. And you see, when you feel that you do not have control, control is typical of our ego. So when you get over the necessity of having control because you know how to handle systems, and when you handle systems, that means people, that means organizations, that means teams, whatever, you come to the realization that you are not alone anymore. Because this is one of the greatest fears and conditions that many business people experience, the fact of being alone. Okay, they have a team, they have an organization, but ultimately, he's the one who has to make all the decisions. He's the one that is taking all the risks, which is true. What happens is that is going to pull you into being even more closed and egoistic because you want to protect yourself. That's why you have to let go of that. And you need to understand that if you trust people, if you actually build inside your organization a culture of trust, then you do that by opening up first towards your teams, towards your organization. And you just by doing that, you start feeling less alone. And you start feeling that people are willing to help you if you will just let them. People want to help people. When you open up and you're in trouble and you're facing a problem or facing some kind of issue, and people want to help you because you trust them. And the worst thing you can do is that people want to help you and you tell them, no, I can handle this on my own. That's the worst thing you can do. Okay. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what my actual work is, how much responsibility I have. Okay. Then explain, describe it. People are not stupid. They understand. and they will be willing to help you.
Yeah.
That's the whole game changer, Sandra. So you go from me to we, as you said, but you have to make the first move because people are not going to force you into doing that because they might get fired, for example.
That's a real thing, Alessandro. And I want to welcome and just acknowledge some of the other beautiful comments here as well. And wonderful. Thank you for our LinkedIn user. It says, totally agree. Leadership is not about control, but about establishing connection for mutual growth of the organization and individual as well. Yes, I agree, Alessandro. People get stuck on habits and they only change if they are forced to change. At that point, it might even be too late. I think that a good leader needs to convince people to change whenever necessary without forcing them, but rather trying to understand the reason why they are like that and that why they need to change and motivate rather than impose.
That's a beautiful comment. I agree 100%. And that's when people, when they're forced to change, and people are forced to change when they feel the pain. Because not necessarily when you get yourself into a situation where you have a problem. But if you're very resilient, and in this case, resilience can be a problem, but then resilience becomes resistance. That's actually resistance. When you resist the change, but you are not going to allow yourself to feel the pain, and you're still not going to change. And at that point, you have to get to a breaking point. And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that. You cannot change it unless there's somebody who can help you understand that it's okay to change. You don't have to get to that point where it's either break it or leave it. No, it's not that dramatic. You don't have to get to that point.
Yeah.
And that would be a good idea to have somebody on their side helping them in that.
Yeah. And I think understanding, as a certified change practitioner, I think the whole change resistance was kind of left over on the side over here. This was the soft skills. We talk about how we used to be functioning. Nowadays, it's like, no, it is essential because change is constant. And the more change that we're experiencing, we need to understand that it's an opportunity to look, to grow, to look at things differently, but we need to invite people in to understand what's in it for them. The early acknowledgement, the early understanding of, and we see this in town halls, we see this in whoever's communicating that change. We need to really, I feel, more strong commitments to the whole change management process in all of the change that we're doing right now. And I don't see that as much, but I feel it is starting to shift because people are resisting. We know that 70% of projects will fail because we haven't put in place the right change management.
Exactly. And then they'll have to change. They have no choice.
Yeah.
But that's not a very wise and good way of changing.
Yeah. And again, I love how hi, Cecilia. Thank you again. But I want to acknowledge, she says that true leaders are who just don't manage. They don't just manage people. They inspire unity and they turn teams into something greater. That's that shared values. I'm going to shift. I know we're already at 35 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could keep going here. And there's so many different areas, but I do want to just kind of go back into the whole leadership heart. Because again, at the essence of us is our heart, getting out of our mind, like reprogramming that subconscious mind, going into the heart. Alessandro, we've talked about, around this importance about the change, the aha moment. What does leading with heart mean to you now? And how has that definition perhaps maybe changed through your own journey of how you've been coaching people, or how it started initially, or maybe it's the same? Because I think that's the important thing of understanding you as an amazing individual that you are, and your commitments, your consistency to help others to change. You have a big heart. So what is your definition of what does leading with heart mean?
It's first of all the desire. And we always come back to that because desire is a starting point. So first of all, you have to feel that desire. When you have that desire, you want to share it. Mm-hmm. And that is where the heart comes in, the love comes in. Now, we have to be very careful because I think there's a great misunderstanding about love and about heart. That it's just, I feel so much for you. That's the feeling of love. Love is the desire to connect with people, that wanting them to be well, before I am. That is the heart. So it's to be working with others, because what we need is to know that we are here for a purpose. You cannot divide or split purpose from heart, because if you divide purpose from heart, the heart becomes egoistical. It's just about me. I feel good by being with a person. And when that person stops being beneficial to me, that I like it, then it's going to disappear. Where's the love? It was just a feeling. Feelings are just signals. Important ones, they are important. We have to feel them. But if there is no purpose, if there is no point, if there is no will and desire to take people to another place where they can feel independent, autonomous, willing in turn to help other people. You don't want them to become egoistic and they suck from you. That doesn't work either. We have to be in a place where people understand that when you have your heart and your purpose together, that is where they change. And in a company, in a business, people must have purposes, not just a leader. And we must help them find that purpose. Then you have two hearts. Because if it's just one heart, at one point it's going to exhaust itself. If we want it to self-feed, then we have to find a way to involve other people into this, and they will feed it back to you. And that's how things will continue running.
I love that. I thank you. It is about the building of that rapport, the building of that connection between others, and heart to heart. It's not head to head. It's the connection also heart to mind, to higher calling and purpose, and with intention. So as we wrap this beautiful podcast up, it's gone so fast. There's so much more. We'll have to do this again, by the way. Can you share how, I know you're doing so many wonderful things. You have your books, you're on podcasts, you're, coaching out there. How can people get to learn more about you, to invite you in to be, their coach? Like, how can people reach you?
They can do that through LinkedIn, of course, or they can do it through my website, which is alessandrocarli.it/en for English. Okay, so it's very simple to get there. From there, they can go anywhere, because I mostly work on LinkedIn, and they will have a very quick response as well for that. And of course, through my website. And as a matter of fact, if I also have a newsletter that for now I've only been mailing in Italian, but I would also like to open up an English channel. So they can register, if they want to my newsletter in English. And then we'll start sending newsletters in English as well.
I'm glad you're going to do it in English. That's awesome. Yes. As we close, I know you have so much wisdom and such, so many gifts to give to the world. Can you maybe share your last kind of closing remarks, things that maybe we haven't said, but are like, this is really important to me, and I love to share it to the Leadership Heart podcast audience. So let's do that now, and then I'll wrap it up after we conclude.
We haven't touched, but it's okay, because it does come. It could be perhaps in another occasion. It's the question of authoritativeness. That is what I talk about. My typical leadership thing is about authoritative leadership, and understanding that it's different from authoritarian. What we have been talking about, actually, it is about authoritative leadership. People need to see that you are in charge. Does not mean that you're controlling them, but you are in charge. You know where you're going. You know what you want to take them. But unless your authoritativeness does not come through, it's going to be a problem. They need to see that you know what you're doing, basically. And there are signals, there are ways that you can do that.
Well, I think that's a really important whole topic area. And I would love to have you back on, and let's do the wonderful deep dive into it and to explore it, because it really is, it's interesting when we look at our beliefs attached to the word, different images, different experiences will come up against those words. And I'm mindful of the word when I say against or for, because there is a experience with those words. I think it's important. Maybe before we do wrap up, I think it's important that we do define the differences. It's interesting. Could you give us a little bit of kind of preliminary information of why they're different? And then we'll go into a deeper dive our next podcast.
Yeah, it's very simple. Authoritarian is when you have the definition, but it's the way you become, that you are already actually, is where you choose the mechanistic road. and you become authoritarian where you need control. So why do you become authoritarian? Because if you see your business as a machine or people as machines, you will want to control them like if you had a mental keyboard and they do what you want, basically. But when they do not have control, these people freak out. That's their weakness of wanting control. Authoritarianism needs control, of course, because control is important, but it is not done through the keyboard, but by understanding the forces and the dynamics that go on between people, understanding what systems are, what they react well towards. And that way you don't have to control them. You don't have to command them because they feel that you're on the same page. You're perfectly aligned with them and they will trust you. It's automatic. And they will see you, as I said before, when you're authoritative, that you know what you're saying, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about.
Well, we will explore that more in a separate podcast because I would love to go and dive into that. It's so important, the different ways of different leadership styles and understanding self in relation to your own self. Thank you, Alessandro. It really is such a beautiful privilege to have you on the Leadership Heart podcast. Your knowledge is just amazing, and it really excites me because this is my happy place, talking about systems and about yourself. As we conclude, I would love to offer everyone, take a moment now and reflect. What did you learn today? What is something new that's interesting for you that you can then go and apply? What is one intention that you want to bring to this world that perhaps maybe you haven't thought about? The new learnings of not just an I, but a we, to be in that present moment rather than being scattered or trying to control everything. What can you do differently? What is something, again, that you can apply? That is my ask of you today. Take the time now, reflect, connect to yourself, observe yourself, and then engage differently. It is with intention. I call that my core change model. And that is a fundamental truth because each of us is in this beautiful journey from our self-discovery through our change readiness into sustainable impact. If we understand that's our leadership model that I use, it is foundational to the leadership heart, to change, to be open to new possibilities. So I thank you again, Alessandro, for this beautiful gift that you gave the globe, for all of us, for my podcast audience. This podcast episode will be coming out within the next week. And I thank you again. Alessandro, I'll meet you on the other side. I'm just going to do my outro. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.